In 1975, the Dutch group the Kilima Hawaiians sang the standard Hawaiian war chant on a TV program. This was 7 years after they released an album under the same name, introducing new audiences to the composition. Though there weren't traditional liner notes, the record included a paragraph about the music. Of course, nowadays with jet travel, the islands are practically next door, but there is an even quicker way to get to Hawaii. Put this record on your turntable and let the Kilima Hawaiians turn you on to instant tropical splendor. The Kilima Hawaiians presented their music as a means of tourism, allowing listeners to transport themselves to an unfamiliar environment. After their formation in 1934, the group would become incredibly popular in Holland, especially after the end of World War II. Their 1964 record, Farewell Hawaii, also didn't provide much information on the people performing the music. However, it still provided audiences with the description of the music they were about to listen to ensure its authenticity. The music of Hawaii is as natural as the lush vegetation and the flower-scented breezes. Guitars and ukuleles play, and their softly insistent beat casts its spell. Primitive rhythms recall the glories of ancient Hawaiian monarchs with mystical names. The Kilima Hawaiians bring you the beautiful sounds of Hawaii in the authentic style of the islands. But you might be wondering, how did a supposedly traditional Hawaiian war chant become a jazz standard that was eventually played by a Dutch band on a program in the 70s? And what does that even have to do with Disneyland? To explain why, we'll have to start at the beginning. For starters, let me break the news to you that, despite what the name suggests, the so-called Hawaiian war chant has nothing to do with war. Written by Prince William Pitt Leleohoku II in the 1860s, the original song was actually called Ka'uai Kahua Hawaii and described an embrace between two lovers. Though the song gained notoriety as a popular love song, it would not be adapted into what we now know as the Hawaiian war chant until the early 1900s. This was during the time that a genre of music had started to emerge under the name HAPA-HAOLE. In the late 1800s, songs from Hawaiian culture began to be exported to the United States, promoting both American tourism and exoticized aesthetics influenced by imperialism. This was also when Queen Liliuokalani wrote what is known as one of the most popular Hawaiian songs of all time, Aloha OE. She wrote Aloha OE after being inspired by the English song The Rock Beside the Sea, and subsequently included elements of its rhythm and English in her new song. This was also a time during which many native Hawaiians were beginning to speak English, and it was fashionable to insert English phrases into Hawaiian music. This song would become a huge hit in both Hawaii and the United States mainland, making its debut in San Francisco via the Royal Hawaiian Band. The Broadway show Bird of Paradise would go on to use Aloha OE to reference an old type of Hawaii, allowing the song to function as a callback to nostalgia. This would serve to not only give some Hawaiians an identity to reminisce about a more traditional view of their homeland, but also help fuel the American tourism industry that operated on inaccurate and romanticized images not of what Hawaii was like, but what Americans thought it was like. However, it's important to highlight that this was not necessarily a cultural exchange in a positive sense. It's impossible to view this era of Hawaiian music without understanding its relationship to the United States. American influence on Hawaii was aggressive and dismissive throughout the 1800s. If you want to learn more about this, I'm going to link to many resources in the description. The aforementioned mixture of borrowing English lyrics and American musical idioms would have an impact, resulting in the HAPA-HAOLE genre. The creation of the genre is often credited to Sonny Cunha, a composer who made Hawaiian music that was hugely successful in the United States. The songs he wrote in the early 1900s would set a blueprint for the genre, mixing traditional Hawaiian music with English lyrics and idioms. Cunha's style of music would go on to influence many HAPA-HAOLE composers, including Johnny Noble, a musician who played in Cunha's band. Noble would take the style of HAPA-HAOLE even further by combining it with American ragtime music and adding a significant amount of jazz elements, such as faster tempos, blues notes, and swing rhythms. This Americanization of Cunha's songs would bring HAPA-HAOLE to a new level and help fully integrate the songs into mainland American culture. In the 1930s, Johnny Noble would become well known for taking the traditional song Ka'uai Kahua Hawaii, speeding it up significantly, and turning it into a jazz standard. The renamed song would be known as Hawaiian War Chant. The exact reasoning for this naming is unknown, but it's apparent that the song itself plays into the aforementioned romanticization and in many ways bastardization of Hawaiian culture in the eyes of mainland America. Once Tommy Dorsey recorded the song on November 29, 1938, though, it was an indisputable hit. By the time World War II had ended, many troops had brought home first-hand encounters and memories of Polynesian culture, not only increasing the popularity of the HAPA-HAOLE genre, but also inspiring so-called tiki culture that would heavily influence the entertainment industry. The rise was not only felt in the United States, though. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, new jazz standards, such as the Hawaiian war chant, would move on to many other countries, bringing us back to the Kilima Hawaiians. I think it's worth reiterating that this type of influence is less about mutual artistic appreciation and more about power dynamics that allow certain groups of people to misrepresent certain musical traditions. Things such as emphasizing the traditional nature of the music without providing background on the music or performers feels uncomfortable when you consider the colonialist history that influenced HAPA-HAOLE. The music of groups such as the Kilima Hawaiians seems less about representing the culture of Hawaii and more about a series of misconceptions that plays into a tourist gaze. However, while HAPA-HAOLE music and tiki culture were influencing American entertainment, there was also a man starting to plan his own theme park that would change the industry. Let's talk about Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room.
To be free, to be on the move, to go for a hike or whatever you like to do. To all there is to be done. It's fun, it's fun, it's fun. To be free, fun to be free.
Disneyland opened to the public on July 17, 1955, and would go on to completely change the American entertainment industry. Influenced by the constantly changing Tivoli gardens in Denmark, Walt Disney declared that Disneyland would never be finished, instead always expanding and introducing new attractions. While developing potential expansions to the park's Main Street area, plans began developing for a Chinatown section that would feature a restaurant. The most notable aspect of this restaurant is that it would host a dinner show that would feature a talking dragon and a mechanical version of the philosopher Confucius. Though this idea would be scrapped quickly, the Imagineers had already begun working on the talking Confucius and decided to instead direct their efforts towards another historical figure, Abraham Lincoln. This would be used in the 1964 World's Fair attraction Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, a hit that's still playing at Disneyland today. The concept of a themed dinner show would also be repurposed. To capitalize off of the popularity of tiki aesthetics along with the recent statehood of Hawaii in 1959, the Imagineers would begin developing a tropical dinner show that would feature birds. However, this idea would quickly be changed to mechanical birds once Walt pointed out that real birds would not work in a restaurant setting due to the potential for them to defecate on guests and food. Despite the aforementioned great moves with Mr. Lincoln, the birds developed for the new Tiki Room attraction would be the first audio animatronics ever. Since its opening, Disneyland already had animated figures in rides such as the Jungle Cruise that used a system of high-pressure air entering a cylinder to control certain movements. This was different, though, than the concept of audio animatronics, a technology that was dependent on audio recordings to move cylinders and trigger movement. This allowed Imagineers to have more realistic and precise motions that could be calibrated to an audio track, creating a more immersive experience for guests. As the Tiki Room attraction was being developed, the idea of a dinner experience was scrapped in favor of making it a strict show. This served a conceptual purpose, but it was also quite practical. If the show was too entertaining and innovative, guests would feel enticed to stay as long as possible, decreasing the overall crowd flow. Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room would open on June 23, 1963 at Disneyland. The show would serenade guests with a variety of pseudo-Polynesian numbers that fall under the genre of HAPA-HAOLE music. The main song was written by Robert and Richard Sherman, the songwriting duo that helped define the sound of Disney in the mid-1900s. It's worth noting, though, that none of the other music for the show was written by them. If you've never seen the Enchanted Tiki Room, let me briefly explain the concept. The show is hosted by 4 audio animatronic macaws named Jose, Pierre, Fritz, and Michael. Each bird is accompanied by a cartoonish stereotypical accent that unfortunately also plays a role in the music, setting the stage for the type of show you are about to watch. The cast of birds leads the audience through a variety show featuring over 150 talking characters, including birds, flowers, a magic fountain, tiki drummers, and tiki totem poles. The show opens with the signature song, The Tiki 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 Room, before going into Let's All Sing Like the Birdies Sing, with some alternate lyrics provided by the Sherman Brothers. There's also a section from Offenbach's opera Tales of Hoffmann, but that was removed in later iterations of the attraction. As you might imagine after watching the intro to this video, the Hawaiian war chant makes an appearance in the finale of the show as characters upset the gods with their celebrating. The show then ends with the birds jokingly asking the audience to leave and singing an arrangement of the Frank Churchill song Hi-Ho from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. What you have to understand about this show is that at the time it was opened, it was truly unique. The elaborate theming and innovative animatronics paired perfectly with the vaudeville-influenced music that made it a truly entertaining show for audience members. The original music also fit quite well with the then developing form of Disney park music. As you may have seen before on my channel, my general criteria for Disney attraction music is as follows. 1. The song is in major, or uses some type of scale that evokes Western tonality. 2. The song is diatonic. This means that if you were to transpose the song to C major, all of the notes of the melody would fit on the white keys of the keyboard. This is what makes melodies easier to sing, increasing their chances of becoming earworms. 3. The text is syllabic. Text setting is nuanced, but it can be summarized by dividing most texts into two categories, syllabic or melismatic. Syllabic text setting means that each syllable in the text gets a note, while melismatic text setting involves stretching multiple notes over a single syllable. Disney park jingles are typically syllabic. 4. The song uses a verse-refrain structure. The repetition of this form not only emphasizes roots in European and American folk music, but also helps make the song sound catchy. The Enchanted Tiki Room is a unique attraction in the sense that a majority of its music does not follow these rules. However, like I've mentioned earlier in this video, none of the other songs were specifically written for the show, so I don't think it makes sense to hold them to the same rules as music specifically composed for Disneyland attractions. The Tiki 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 Room is a prime example of my Disney attraction rules, following them to a T. Another interesting thing about this song is that it has one of my favorite Sherman Brothers lyrics. The bird of paradise is an elegant bird. It likes to be seen and it loves to be heard. Not only is this line quite poetic, but it also evokes the aforementioned musical The Bird of Paradise that helped cement HAPA-HAOLE music in American culture. The arrangements by George Bruns also effectively evoke the style of HAPA-HAOLE music, allowing visitors to view Polynesian culture through a specifically filtered lens. What you have to also understand about the Enchanted Tiki Room is that its sound design was pretty extensive and unique for its time. The idea of a variety show led by audio animatronics simply wasn't something that existed before, making the concept incredibly innovative. It's impossible for me to know how the attraction would have sounded in the 60s, but I have compiled a list of possible speaker placements for the show. Before I show you these photos, I want to note that this is all speculation about the Walt Disney World version of the attraction. Not only was the Disneyland version's sound system upgraded in the 1990s, but the Disney World version wasn't transformed back into the original Enchanted Tiki Room until 2011, leaving room open for them to maybe update speakers or make other types of adjustments. However, I do think there's something to be said for how the speakers are stationed throughout the attraction. Disney Parks sound design has changed a great deal over the years, but the idea of disorienting audiences by hiding speakers in many different locations is integral to the immersion present on most attractions. Based on what I know about Disney Parks speakers, it's likely that the ones used in the attraction are JBLs, but there's also the possibility that they're Altec. As you enter the pre-show area of the attraction, there are two birds that greet you and introduce you to the concept of the show. As you're gathered in rows, there are speakers hidden in the ceiling. One of the most clever speaker placements happens in the center of the pre-show. If you look at this photo, you can see that the sounds of the birds are amplified via speakers at the way top of the roof, completely invisible to the average guest. The speakers look similar to the ones in the ceiling. Once you enter the main showroom, you'll notice that it's very difficult to identify where the sound is coming from. This is because there are just so many speakers hidden around you that do a great job of obscuring the sound source. There are the obvious speakers hung from the ceiling, but they allow the voices of the birds to be heard. Instead of having the speakers on the actual perches that the main birds sit on, they're hung around the room and positioned in the direction of where the birds are sitting. It's a great effect. In the Let's All Sing Like the Birdies Sing sequence, the large set piece that descends from the ceiling does have some speakers hidden in it. There are also some speakers hidden in the ceiling next to the lights. That being said, my favorite parts of the sound design are the things that happen behind you. During the show, it's incredibly difficult to tell where most of the sounds are coming from, with many of the bass-heavy noises being hidden in the surrounding set. Some speakers are also hidden by plants and clever paint jobs, allowing the audio to not be compromised but still stay out of view of the audience. Again, this is only speculation, but I think it's a useful start to understanding just how complex and nuanced the Tiki Room can be. If you have any more information on the sound design, please don't hesitate to send me an email. Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room continues to entertain visitors from all around the world, with almost every Disney park having some iteration of the attraction. However, for others it might seem less like entertainment and more like a cheap mischaracterization of a culture that becomes uncomfortable when you consider the history of colonialism that preceded it. In a similar way to the music of the Kilima Hawaiians and other musical tourism groups, the attraction occupies an awkward territory where it's not necessarily meant to represent Hawaiian culture while also representing it. This allows portrayers of certain tropes to not be liable for what exactly they're presenting. It also becomes complicated when you consider what's being omitted from the picture. If an easy cop-out is that the tiki fad was never meant to authentically represent Hawaiian culture in the first place, then why has it essentially replaced Hawaii in the minds of many mainland Americans? Are you a bad person if you enjoy the Tiki Room? I wouldn't say so. I think the ways in which we interact with culture are very nuanced, and the concept of problematic faves is something you're probably already interacting with if you're interested in a YouTube channel specifically about Disney. However, I do think it's helpful to contextualize and understand the entertainment that you consume within a historical lens. If you're someone who has the option to not see tiki culture as a product of colonialism, learning about the actual history that it was inspired by can be a helpful way of preventing that history from being erased. That being said, I'm including links to resources about the history of Hawaii so you can learn more. Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room set a precedent precedent for what a theme park show could be. By introducing the concept of audio animatronics, it would also go on to revolutionize the industry, spawning countless ripoffs and sending Disney into a new era of innovation. Above all, though, it stands as a testament to the idea that with the right concept, you can truly take audiences anywhere.
Let's all sing like the birdies sing. Tweet, 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 tweet. Let's all sing like the birdies sing. Sweet, 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 sweet. Let's all warble like nightingales. Give your throat a treat. Take your time from the birds. Now you all know the words. Tweet, 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 tweet. Do, 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 do. Take your time from the birds. Now you all know the words. Tweet, 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 tweet.